Welcome back to Bad Things in History, where once again we serve up a buffet of tragedy for your dining pleasure. Buen provecho. Our series examining the worst and mostly forgotten events of the 1970s continues. This time we're putting 1975 under the microscope. Human stupidity and rage were on display for all to see, and as always, nature itself produced some bonus misery. Let's begin with our first story about an incompetent boat captain in Australia. Tasman Bridge Disaster. Tasmania is an island off the coast of southern Australia. One of the main economic activities on the island in the 1970s was mining. Cargo ships carrying ore traveled up and down the river daily. The capital city of the island is Hobart. Commuters moving through the capital used a bridge that crossed over the Derwent River. Ships traveling from the mines carried their cargo beneath the bridge. Most of the time, the vehicles on the bridge and the ships below them safely avoided each other, but on January 5, 1975, an inattentive captain would end this harmonious arrangement. Around 9:30 p.m., Captain Boleslaw Pelc was driving his cargo ship, SS Lake Illawara, up the river. It was carrying 10,000 tons of concentrated zinc ore. As the ship approached the bridge, it veered off course. The strong current that day was part of the reason, but Captain Pelc also wasn't paying attention. The ship lost control and drifted into pylons that supported the bridge. A section of bridge collapsed and fell onto the ship. Within minutes, it sank to the bottom of the river. 4 cars drove through a gap in the bridge, falling into the river below. 5 people died from falling into the water. Frank and Sylvia Manley almost joined them, but stopped right before going off the bridge. Sylvia later told reporters, "As we approached, it was a foggy night. There was no lights on the bridge at the time. We just thought there was an accident. We slowed down to about 40 kilometers per hour, and I'm peering out the window, desperately looking to see the car. What was happening on the bridge? We couldn't see anything, but we kept on traveling. The next thing I said to Frank, 'The bridge is gone,' and he just applied the brakes and we just sat there swinging. As we sat there, we couldn't see anything in the water. All we could see was a big whirlpool of water, and apparently the boat was sinking. So with that, we undid the car door and I hopped out." Locals rushed to save the crew of the cargo ship. 7 of them died before being rescued. The local economy was temporarily devastated by the bridge collapse. Traffic couldn't travel from one side of the island to the other easily until the bridge was finally repaired on October 8, 1977. Kidnapping and Murder. England was an exceptionally violent place in the 1970s. In addition to frequent bombings by the Irish Republican Army, one of the worst criminals in England's history was also hard at work. Lesley Whittle was born on May 3, 1957. Her birth was the result of an affair between her father George and her mother Dorothy. George and Dorothy never married, and George also never divorced his first wife. George Whittle died in 1970. He left nothing to his estranged wife and gave everything to Dorothy and Lesley. The legal battle over his fortune became a popular story in the local news. Donald Neilson was able to take advantage of the situation. He had spent much of his life preparing for an opportunity like this. Starting in 1970, he began committing burglaries all over England. He committed at least 400 of them. Donald would always wear a balaclava during the robberies, which earned him the nickname the Black Panther. He escalated from stealing to murder in 1974. While ransacking a post office, Donald Neilson killed 3 of the people that worked there. Despite committing frequent and violent crimes, he was elusive. Police could not catch Donald. On January 14, 1975, Donald decided he would help himself to George Whittle's fortune. He broke into Dorothy's house, planning to kidnap her, but he found Lesley first and decided to capture her instead. When Dorothy awoke the next morning, she noticed that Lesley never came downstairs for breakfast. She walked into Lesley's room and found a ransom note. It demanded £50,000 as payment. Meanwhile, Donald took Lesley to a park in Staffordshire and placed her in the drainage shaft for a nearby reservoir. He left her down there without clothes. A piece of wire was shaped into a noose and placed around her neck, but Donald wasn't completely heartless. He left her with a mattress and a sleeping bag. Lesley's brother tried to deliver the ransom. However, the local police mistakenly made their presence known before the exchange could happen. Donald didn't appear and Lesley was not delivered. The police finally reached out to the public for help on February 10, 1975. They also began a more thorough search of the park. On March 7th, they entered the shaft where Lesley was taken. She was hanging from the wire looped around her neck. Lesley was dead. Additionally, her body was emaciated, demonstrating that Donald did not bother feeding her. Investigators soon discovered that Donald Neilson was the culprit. He evaded capture until December 1975 when he was finally arrested. After a short trial, he was sentenced to life in prison. In 2008, he developed a degenerative brain disease and tried to have the sentence commuted. The judge refused, saying, "This is a case where the gravity of the applicant's offenses justifies a whole life order. The manner in which the young girl was killed demonstrates that it, too, involved a substantial degree of premeditation or planning. It also involved the abduction of the young girl. The location and manner of Lesley Whittle's death indicates that she must have been subjected by the applicant to a dreadful and horrific ordeal." Donald Neilson died in a hospital in 2011. Gerald Ford assassination attempts. Gerald Ford was sworn in as President of the United States on August 9, 1974. He was elevated from the role of Vice President after Richard Nixon resigned his role as Commander-in-Chief. Richard Nixon was forced to leave office due to his part in the Watergate scandal. There were many in the United States who thought that Richard Nixon should face punishment for his crimes, but Gerald Ford decided to ensure that could never happen. On September 8, 1974, President Ford issued a full pardon for Richard Nixon. Ford may have thought his political battles were over, but the insanity was just beginning. Before the end of 1975, he would nearly be killed in two separate events. Lynette Fromm, also known as Squeaky, was born in Santa Monica, California on October 22, 1948. She graduated high school in 1966. By the time she finally left school, Squeaky was also using a lot of drugs. Her father kicked her out of the house and she became homeless. Squeaky found herself sitting on Venice Beach in 1967. A bus arrived and Charles Manson stepped out of it. She decided he was psychic and joined his family. However, when Manson was sent to jail in 1971 for a series of murders, she had to find something else to do with her time. She decided that smog was going to kill California's redwood trees, and the only way to stop this was to eliminate the government's most powerful symbol. She was going to have to kill Gerald Ford to save the trees. On the morning of September 5, 1975, President Ford arrived in Sacramento, California. As he was moving through the crowd, Squeaky, who was wearing a red dress, approached him. She took a Colt .45 revolver that was strapped to her leg and pointed it at the president. She pulled the trigger several times, but the gun was not loaded. Secret Service agents took her away and the president continued with his day. Squeaky Fromm was sent to prison where she remained until being paroled in July 2008. Gerald Ford would have another near miss with death just 17 days later. Sarah Jane Moore was born in Charleston, West Virginia on February 15, 1930. By the time she was 45, it was clear that Sarah was unstable. She had been through 5 husbands. She also had 4 children, 3 of which had been adopted. In 1975, she moved to San Francisco. During her time there, Sarah began to believe that the only way to change the United States government was to kill, and the person she needed to murder to make sure change could happen was Gerald Ford. On September 21, 1975, police arrested Sarah. They found she was carrying a .44 revolver and 114 rounds of ammunition. They let her go but kept the weapon. Sarah didn't give up. She went to a gun store and bought a .38 revolver. Then she began planning for the best way to kill the president. On the morning of September 22nd, she was standing across the street from the St. Francis Hospital. When President Ford was about 40 feet away, she shot at him, but the round missed. As Sarah raised the gun to take another shot, a former Marine named Oliver Sipple grabbed her arm, causing the second shot to miss. It was later determined that the sights on the .38 were not configured correctly. If Sarah had been able to use her gun that the police took, or if Oliver Sipple had not grabbed her arm, she might have actually been successful in killing the president. Sarah Jane Moore was sentenced to life in prison, but on December 31, 2007, she was released on parole. The St. Pius X High School tragedy. Canada is usually not known for being a violent place, but on a few occasions it has been at the center of school shootings. On October 27, 1975, students attended class at St. Pius X High School just like any other day. However, students and teachers were unaware of the unusual and deadly event which would soon find them. At 2:30 p.m., Robert Pelc showed up at the school on his 10-speed bicycle. He was an 18-year-old student who was graduating soon, but on this day he wasn't there to learn. Robert walked through the building until finding the classroom he was looking for. He opened the door and began smiling at the students. Then Robert pulled out a sawed-off shotgun and began firing at the children. Robert then stepped out of the classroom, put the shotgun to his head, and pulled the trigger. The event was over in just 10 seconds. 6 students were wounded in the shotgun attack. One of them would later die from extensive injuries. Around the time Robert was shooting at students, firemen entered his house. A neighbor saw smoke coming from the roof and called them. When firefighters entered the basement, they found the charred remains of a young girl handcuffed to the bed. After investigating, authorities determined that on the morning of the attack, Robert visited his neighbor Kim Ribbo. He convinced her to join him in the basement. Then he sexually assaulted her and strangled her to death. To try and cover up the crime, he put a pile of pornographic magazines on the floor around the bed and set them on fire. After completing his acts of murder and arson, Robert Pelc then jumped on his bike and went to the school. Psychiatrists who read Robert's diaries in the years after the shooting claimed that it would have been impossible to predict this violent act. SS Edmund Fitzgerald. Lake Superior is the largest freshwater lake in the world in terms of the surface area it occupies. The lake is so large that it contains 10% of the freshwater on Earth. It is also important for shipping mined ores to various locations in the United States and Canada. The freighters that traveled across the giant lake sometimes failed to reach their destination. Over the past 200 years, dangerous weather conditions have sent around 350 ships to the bottom of the lake. SS Edmund Fitzgerald launched on June 7, 1958. At the time, it was the largest vessel to ever travel on any of the Great Lakes. Its job was to carry iron ore from mines near Duluth, Minnesota to ports all over the lake. On the afternoon of November 9, 1975, the ship left from Superior, Wisconsin. Its next destination was a steel mill near Detroit, Michigan. It joined a second freighter for the journey, which was named SS Arthur M. Anderson. Weather predictions claimed a storm might arrive the next day, but the ships thought they could reach their destination before the storm arrived. By later that evening, the weather forecast had changed. A powerful storm with very strong winds was expected to move across the lake that night. Edmund Fitzgerald and Arthur M. Anderson both began moving north, hoping to find shelter near the shore. Throughout the night, winds moving at 60 miles per hour slammed into the ships. It also created giant waves that pounded the vessels. The next afternoon, on November 10th, Captain Ernest McSorley of the Edmund Fitzgerald reached out over the radio. Captain McSorley reported that his ship was taking on water and listing to one side. He asked if Arthur M. Anderson could remain close in case help was needed. As the afternoon progressed, the weather conditions deteriorated even more. Wind speeds reached up to 86 miles per hour. Also, 25-foot waves slammed into the ships. At 7:10 p.m., Captain McSorley said on the radio, "We are holding our own." It was the last time anybody ever heard from him. 10 minutes later, Edmund Fitzgerald was gone. It happened so fast that nobody knew exactly what happened. Later that night, a search began. Ships on the lake searched for the missing vessel until daylight. Coast Guard vessels from both the United States and Canada also searched. They found floating debris, but Edmund Fitzgerald couldn't be found. All 29 of its crew were gone. The United States Navy located the missing ship on November 14, 1975. It was a few miles west of Ontario, Canada. Over the next 20 years, several dives were made to retrieve items from the wreck and to determine what happened. Many of those who investigated the disaster came to believe that the ship was broken into pieces by the strong waves, then it sank so fast that the crew didn't have time to react. One of the reasons why this became a popular theory is because divers found one of the crew on the bottom of the lake. He had a fully inflated life vest on, but still drowned. There is no way to know for sure exactly what destroyed SS Edmund Fitzgerald, but inaccurate navigational charts combined with inaccurate weather forecasting contributed to its demise. Regulations were updated to help prevent disasters like this from happening again in the future. Accidents, assassins, kidnapping, and murder were unfortunate features of 1975. Most of those who met their end during this troubling year never knew that death was coming, but it found them just the same. What do you think about this chaotic year in human history? Did we miss anything important? Tell us about it in the comments below. Also, if you learned something interesting from this episode, we would like to ask you for help. Please like this video and any others on our channel that you enjoy, and please subscribe so you don't miss out on horrible history in the future. Your participation really does help us reach a wider audience. Thank you for watching Bad Things in History.